Have you ever had a moment when life seemed determined to humiliate you, only to surprise you with something beautiful instead? That's exactly what happened to me. If you're enjoying this incredible journey already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us all second chances are worth taking. Now, let me tell you how I met the love of my life, looking like I just wrestled an alligator in a swamp. Emma Parker rushed down the rain, slicked sidewalk, cursing under her breath, as she checked her watch for the 5th time in 2 minutes. She was already 15 minutes late for the blind date her well-meaning but persistent best friend had arranged. A date Emma had reluctantly agreed to after months of Hannah's relentless campaigning. "He's perfect for you," Hannah had insisted. "Smart, successful, kind, and he has the most adorable daughter." Emma had finally caved, less from interest and more from exhaustion at Hannah's persistence. Dating hadn't been a priority since her last relationship imploded spectacularly 2 years ago, leaving her nursing wounds that still occasionally ached when she let her guard down. The light rain that had been falling all day suddenly intensified, transforming into a downpour. Emma ducked her head and quickened her pace, clutching her purse to her chest to protect her phone. The upscale restaurant where she was meeting her mystery date was just a block away when disaster struck. A sleek black SUV sped through a puddle beside her, sending a wave of muddy water cascading over her cream-colored dress and carefully styled hair. Emma gasped, freezing in shock as the cold, filthy water soaked through to her skin. "No, no, no," she moaned, looking down at herself in horror. Her once elegant outfit was now a splattered mess of brown and gray. Droplets of mud clung to her hair and face. She looked like she'd been mud wrestling. For a brief moment, Emma considered turning around and going home. She could text Hannah, make up some excuse about feeling ill, but something stopped her. Perhaps it was stubbornness, or the knowledge that Hannah would never let her hear the end of it. Or maybe it was the tiny voice inside that whispered she'd spent too long hiding from possibilities. Taking a deep breath, Emma marched toward the restaurant, her ruined heels squelching with every step. She tried to wipe some of the mud from her face, but only succeeded in smearing it further. The maitre d' gave her a horrified look as she approached, water dripping onto the polished marble floor. "I have a reservation," she said with as much dignity as she could muster. "Under Calloway or Parker." Inside the elegant restaurant, Jackson Calloway checked his watch again, sighing deeply. He'd promised himself he'd wait exactly 20 minutes before leaving. As a single father running a tech empire, time was his most precious commodity, one he couldn't afford to waste. His daughter's nanny had canceled at the last minute, forcing him to bring 8-year-old Lily along and seat her at a nearby table with her tablet and headphones. She was happily drawing digital pictures, occasionally glancing up to give him encouraging smiles that melted his heart. Jackson hadn't wanted to come on this date in the first place. His sister Claire had badgered him for months, insisting he needed to get back out there. 3 years had passed since his wife walked out, declaring that motherhood and marriage had been mistakes that interfered with her career ambitions. The wound had healed, but the scar remained, a constant reminder to protect himself and, more importantly, to protect Lily. The maitre d' approached his table with an uncomfortable expression. "Mr. Calloway, your guest has arrived." Jackson looked up to thank him and froze, his eyes widening at the sight before him. A woman stood there, completely drenched and covered in mud from head to toe. Her hair hung in wet clumps, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and her once white dress was now a canvas of brown splatters. His first instinct was to assume this was some kind of practical joke. His second was irritation that someone would show up in such a state to a high-end restaurant. His third, which surprised him most, was curiosity. because despite the mud and the mess, there was something in the way she held herself. A dignity, a refusal to be embarrassed. And when she met his gaze, her eyes sparkled with a combination of humor and defiance that caught him completely off guard. "I'm Emma Parker," she said, extending a slightly muddy hand. "And before you say anything, I should warn you that I've had a spectacularly bad day, and if you make a joke about me looking like swamp, things less attractive cousin, I might just have to dump what's left of this puddle in my shoe onto your very expensive-looking shirt." Jackson found himself laughing despite his best intentions. He took her hand and shook it firmly. "Jackson Calloway. And I was actually thinking more mud monster from the Black Lagoon." Emma's laugh was genuine and warm, lighting up her face beneath the mud streaks. "Well, at least you didn't run away screaming." "The day's still young," he replied with a small smile. The maitre d' cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps Madam would like to visit our restroom facilities before being seated." Emma glanced down at herself and grimaced. "That might be wise, yes. Thank you." As she walked away, Jackson realized he was at a crossroads. The sensible thing would be to make his excuses and leave. This woman was clearly chaos personified, and chaos was exactly what he'd worked so hard to eliminate from his life, after picking up the pieces his ex-wife had left behind. But then he caught sight of Lily watching the exchange with wide, fascinated eyes. She gave him a thumbs up and mouth. "I like her!" And something in him softened. Maybe a little chaos wasn't always a bad thing. In the bathroom, Emma did her best to salvage what she could of her appearance. She washed the mud from her face and arms, tried to rinse the worst of it from her hair, and used paper towels to dab at the stains on her dress. It was hopeless, of course. She still looked like she'd been dragged backward through a mudslide. "You could just leave," she told her reflection. "Call it a day. Order takeout. Watch a movie with your cat." But then she thought about the man waiting outside. He hadn't laughed at her, well, not unkindly anyway. There had been something in his eyes, amusement, yes, but also a spark of interest. And he was, objectively speaking, gorgeous. Tall with broad shoulders, dark hair with just a touch of silver at the temples, and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Oh, what the hell?" Emma muttered, straightening her shoulders. "It's not like I can look any worse." When she returned to the table, she was surprised to find Jackson still there, waiting, and even more surprised to see a young girl now sitting beside him, looking at Emma with undisguised curiosity and delight. "You look like you wrestled a mud monster and won," the girl said, her eyes wide with admiration. Jackson looked mortified. "Emma, this is my daughter Lily. She was supposed to stay at her own table, but she was curious. I wanted to meet the mud lady." Lily explained matter of factly. "Dad never brings interesting people to dinner." Emma couldn't help but laugh. "Well, I'm honored to be considered interesting." "It's nice to meet you, Lily." "Why are you all muddy?" Lily asked, ignoring her father's gentle Lily manners. Emma sat down, feeling strangely comfortable despite her appearance. "A car drove through a puddle and splashed me. It wasn't their fault. They probably didn't even see me, but it did make for a rather dramatic entrance." "Like in the movies," Lily exclaimed. "When something bad happens but it turns out good in the end." "We'll see about that," Emma said with a wry smile, glancing at Jackson. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I have to admit, most women would have gone home to change, or canceled altogether." Emma shrugged. "I considered it, but I figured, what's the worst that could happen? You'd take one look at me and run for the hills." "I almost did," he admitted. "Why didn't you?" Jackson's eyes flicked toward his daughter, then back to Emma. "Curiosity, I suppose, and Lily's endorsement. She has good instincts about people. Plus," Lily added, "Dad says it's important to be brave and not judge books by their covers. Your dad sounds pretty wise, Emma said, something warm unfurling in her chest as she watched Jackson's expression soften when he looked at his daughter. The waiter approached, visibly trying to maintain his professional demeanor despite Emma's appearance. She ordered a glass of red wine. Might as well complete the disaster outfit with some spill potential. And Jackson ordered a scotch. So, he said after the waiter left, tell me about yourself. When you're not making dramatic mud, covered entrances into fancy restaurants, that is. Emma smiled, feeling herself relax for the first time. I run a small bookstore downtown. It specializes in rare and antique books, but we have plenty of contemporary titles, too. It was my parents' shop, but they retired to Florida 3 years ago, and I took over, a bookstore owner, Jackson said thoughtfully. That explains a lot, does it? The quiet confidence, the willingness to face public humiliation rather than break a commitment, the slightly romantic worldview that things might work out despite initial appearances. Emma raised an eyebrow. That's quite an analysis from a man who's known me for all of 15 minutes. Jackson smiled, a genuine one that transformed his face from merely handsome to breathtaking. I'm good at reading people. It's part of my job. And what job is that? I run a tech company. We develop software for environmental monitoring systems. So you're a tech millionaire with a heart for the environment. That sounds suspiciously perfect. What's the catch? Jackson's smile faltered slightly. The catch is sitting right here, he said, nodding toward Lily, who was now back on her tablet. I'm a single dad with a demanding job and very little free time. Most women find that combination less than appealing. There was a story there, Emma could tell. Pain lingered behind his words, old but not forgotten. She recognized it because she carried her own. Their loss, she said simply, raising her newly arrived wine glass. To first impressions, mud and all. He clinked his glass against hers, his eyes never leaving her face. To first impressions, as they ordered dinner, Emma noticed Lily watching them with undisguised interest, occasionally whispering something to her father that made him either smile or blush. There was something beautiful about their relationship, a closeness and understanding that made Emma's heart ache with unexpected longing. So how did you end up on a blind date? She asked, genuinely curious. You don't seem like the type who needs help meeting women. Jackson laughed. My sister Claire is determined to see me settled again. She means well, but she doesn't understand that my priority is Lily, not finding someone to share my bed. And what does Lily think about that? Jackson looked surprised by the question, as if no one had ever asked before. I don't know. We haven't really discussed it. I want a mom, Lily piped up, proving she was paying more attention than they'd realized. Not like my real mom. She didn't want to be a mom. I want a nice one who reads stories and bakes cookies and doesn't mind when I get muddy. An awkward silence fell over the table. Emma saw the pain flash across Jackson's face before he carefully masked it. Lily, we've talked about this. It's not that simple to find someone who... I know. Lily interrupted with the frankness only children can get away with. You're scared they'll leave like Mom did. But not everyone leaves, Dad. Emma felt like an intruder witnessing something intensely personal, but Lily turned to her with bright, hopeful eyes. Do you like kids? Do you read stories? Can you bake cookies? Lily, Jackson said, his voice gentle but firm. That's enough. You're making Emma uncomfortable. But Emma wasn't uncomfortable. She was touched. It's okay, she assured him, then turned to Lily. I love kids. I host a children's reading hour at my bookstore every Saturday morning. And while I can't claim to be a master baker, I make chocolate chip cookies that have been known to disappear within minutes. Lily beamed triumphantly at her father. See, she's perfect. Jackson's face reddened. "Lily, please go back to your drawing. This is grown-up time." With a dramatic sigh that only pre-teens can truly perfect, Lily returned to her tablet, but not before giving Emma a conspiratorial wink. "I'm sorry about that," Jackson said quietly once Lily was engrossed in her digital art. "Her mother left when she was 5. It's been just the two of us ever since." "You don't need to apologize," Emma said. "She's wonderful, honest and open. Those are rare qualities these days. Sometimes too honest," Jackson said with a rueful smile. "But yes, she's the best thing that ever happened to me." As their meals arrived, the conversation flowed more easily. Emma told Jackson about growing up surrounded by books, how she'd initially resisted taking over the family business, wanting to forge her own path, but had eventually realized it was where she belonged. Jackson shared stories of building his company from the ground up, the challenges of balancing work and fatherhood, and his passion for developing technology that could help protect the environment for future generations. "What about you?" he asked as they lingered over coffee. "No ex-husbands or children in your background?" Emma shook her head. "No marriages or children. There was someone a couple of years ago. We were together for 3 years, and I thought we wanted the same things: family, stability, a life together. Turns out I was wrong." "What happened?" Jackson asked, his voice gentle. Emma took a deep breath. She rarely talked about Matthew, but something about Jackson made her want to open up. "He was offered a job in London, a fantastic opportunity truly. He asked me to go with him, but it would have meant giving up the bookstore, leaving everything I'd built. I suggested we try long distance for a while, see if we could make it work," he said. She paused, the memory still painful. "He said if I really loved him, I wouldn't hesitate. That my unwillingness to drop everything proved I wasn't committed enough." "That's not fair," Jackson said, frowning. "No, it wasn't. But it made me realize we had different definitions of love. For him, love meant I would sacrifice everything for his dreams. For me, love means supporting each other's dreams, finding compromises, building something together." She smiled sadly. "Anyway, he left. Last I heard, he's married with a baby on the way." "His loss," Jackson said, echoing her earlier words. Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them. Recognition, perhaps. Two people who had been hurt, who carried scars but weren't defined by them. Lily, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly spoke up. "Can Emma come see my science project tomorrow? It's about butterfly metamorphosis." Jackson opened his mouth, likely to gently refuse, but Emma beat him to it. "I'd love to see your science project, Lily. If your dad says it's okay, of course." Jackson looked surprised but not displeased. "Are you sure?" "Don't feel obligated. Lily has a way of putting people on the spot." "I'm genuinely interested," Emma assured him. "Besides, I still owe her for not being horrified by my mud monster appearance."
"Yes!"
Lily pumped her fist victoriously. "Dad, can she come for dinner too? I can help cook." Jackson laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Let's not overwhelm Emma all at once, sweetheart." He turned to her. "But dinner would be nice, if you're free. I promise a mud-free evening." "I'd like that," Emma said, surprised by how much she meant it. As they prepared to leave, Emma braced herself to face the world in her mud-stained dress. Jackson surprised her by producing a large umbrella and his own suit jacket. "It's still raining," he explained, draping the jacket around her shoulders. "This should help a little." The jacket was warm from his body and smelled faintly of expensive cologne. Emma pulled it closer, touched by the gesture. Outside, Jackson insisted on driving Emma home, despite her protests that she could call a ride-share. "It's the least I can do after you braved public humiliation to keep our date," he said. In the back seat, Lily had already fallen asleep, her tablet clutched to her chest. Emma watched as Jackson carefully buckled her in, brushing a strand of hair from her face with such tenderness it made Emma's heart clench. The drive to her apartment was quiet but comfortable. When they arrived, Jackson insisted on walking her to her door, leaving a sleeping Lily safely locked in the car where he could see her. "Thank you for not running away," Emma said as they stood outside her apartment door. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay," he replied softly. There was a moment, brief but electric, when Emma thought he might kiss her. Instead, he reached out and gently wiped a spot of dried mud she'd missed from her cheek. "I'll text you about tomorrow," he said. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Jackson." As she watched him walk back to his car, Emma realized she was still wearing his jacket. She started to call out, then stopped herself. A reason to see him again, she thought with a smile. Inside her apartment, Emma's cat Dickens greeted her with his usual indifference, followed by sudden intense interest when he smelled the unfamiliar scent on the jacket. "Yes, I met someone," she told him as she changed into comfortable pajamas. "And yes, he seems special. But don't get too excited. It's early days yet." Still, as she crawled into bed, Emma couldn't help feeling that something significant had happened. She'd gone on a blind date looking like a disaster, and instead of finding humiliation, she'd found possibility. The next day at the bookstore, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Jackson and Lily. She found herself checking her phone more often than usual, waiting for his text. When it finally came, around midday, she felt a flutter of excitement that surprised her. "Lily has been talking non-stop about showing you her science project. Dinner at our place tonight, 7 p.m. I promise no formal attire required, mud optional." Emma smiled as she typed her reply. "I'll be there, though I'm planning to arrive mud-free this time. Text me your address. Should I bring anything?" His response came quickly. "Just yourself, and maybe a children's book recommendation. Lily's going through them at an alarming rate." That evening, Emma stood outside an impressive brownstone in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. She knew Jackson was successful, but the reality of his wealth hadn't fully registered until now. For a moment, doubt crept in. What was she doing here? They came from different worlds. Before she could overthink further, the door flew open and Lily stood there, beaming. "You came! And you're not muddy?" She grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her inside. "Come see my butterflies!" The interior of the house was beautiful, but not ostentatious. Warm colors, comfortable furniture, and walls lined with books. It felt like a home, not a showpiece. Jackson appeared,